Welcome to the Pretty Intense podcast. Today on the show is Jillian Turecki. She is a psychologist. She's a certified relationship coach and teacher, as well as writer. Man, she just has her finger on the pulse of just such key issues that people experience in relationships. And man, we just flowed and navigated through all of the challenges and what the relationship's for. And I thought what was fun is a lot of times we'd be like, here's a scenario and okay, what's the right answer to that in a good relationship? Okay, what's the wrong answer to that in a bad relationship or that indicates one? I mean, relationships are here to teach us a lot of really, really amazing things. There's some people, as she said, that, stick it out and are miserable and, reframing an ending of a relationship from being a failure to just an ending. And then there's others that don't fight hard enough. So hopefully in this episode, you can hear, if you're wondering, why should I stay in this relationship? Should I not? What are these good signs, bad signs? I hope you like and learn a lot from this episode. Please hit the subscribe button. I appreciate that every time. It shows me that my content is hitting home. The bell for notifications of the episodes, and give me your 2 cents in the comments. Today's Pretty Intense partner is Athletic Greens. I take AG1 by Athletic Greens literally every day. I gave AG1 a try because I wanted to nourish my gut health. I wanted to have more energy. I wanted to add more micronutrients to my body. I take it first thing in the morning before I have coffee and then before I go work out. It makes me feel so good. I'm giving my body the nutrition it craves. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and get 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/prettyintense. That's drinkag1.com/prettyintense. Check it out. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
I've been following your stuff such a long time. And I just don't know where you get your density of data. It's always so applicable, and it's so
Is it? Oh, good.
Yeah. Good. I don't, what do you do that keeps your finger on the pulse? Because it always seems even when I was this morning, just double checking all the things that I wanted to talk to you about, as I'm going through them, I'm making more notes. I'm like, man, it's just so informational and helpful.
I think it's because I've worked with so many people and continue to work with so many people, and I have really great mentors. So I that's the only thing that I could really, and I'm a workaholic, so maybe that's it. But I think it's mostly just because I've worked with so many people, and because I speak to 2 different mentors every week. One of them is just one of the best strategic family therapists in the world, basically. And she's an 83-year-old woman. So she keeps me very on my toes, not to get seduced by what everyone is talking about in the pop psychology zeitgeist. So just to stay very real.
Might need that name and number someday.
I know, exactly. And then the other one also for case studies, and she's case studies and also marketing stuff and all that kind of stuff. She's been with me since the very beginning. So actually both of them have. Yeah. I think mentorship is so important. I think it's key. You have to have a mentor of some sort, whatever that really looks like. But I think we all need help. Life is hard. This is not, we don't come with a manual, and we need mentorship, especially around work, relationships, just all of it. Don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, yes. And all I keep thinking about is how relationships, I think everyone would agree they're hard. Even the ones that last 50 years, they're oh, there was some tough times.
Yes.
They take work. There can be phases and long periods of time where it's not hard, but with enough time and duration, you're going to get there.
Yeah.
So you talk about having these mentors as really part of your team to be able to achieve highly. And everyone does relationships, yet they're not the thing that we're really taught about. We don't learn anything about them in school. Our parents aren't, the birds and the bees conversation doesn't even happen about sex, bro. I'm sure, let alone hey, how's it going? I mean, the best thing that comes, it seems like one of the only things that comes from family and friends is like, I like them, I don't like them, or I like her, I don't
Oh,
like
totally. I'm attracted, I'm not attracted.
Man, it seems like there's a gap. There's a really big gap. And therapy used to be super like uncool and weird. And thank God at least that's come along. I mean,
Yeah.
I asked my parents, I was like, "Did you guys ever think about going to therapy?" And this was like a year or two ago. And my mom looked at me and she's like, "No." And I'm like, that's like now. I mean, like it's not even uncommon. Why
Yeah.
is that?
Because I'm a Jewish New Yorker. So it's like if you're a Jew from New York, you're in therapy, but everyone else, no one's in therapy. Why is that? I mean, I think it's just people are becoming more aware of the fact that they need help, right? And that we can't actually do it alone. And I think that technology has played a big role in this because it's the sharing of information. It's moving very fast. So now people are like wanting to feel more connected, right? And people are noticing, oh, I don't feel as connected. And that's part of technology. And it's like, how do I feel more connected? And then also technology spreading sort of, also the wisdom of just like, these are the things that you need to think about. So I think that part of it is it's the positive influence, if you will, of technology. I think it actually plays a pretty big role. And so, yeah, it's like, it's just culture. Things move in sort of in waves. And so part of our culture is advancing in terms of how we think about mental health. And I think technology definitely plays a really large role in that. And I guess evolution plays a role in that. Honestly, getting to the place where you're like, where people they want to evolve, they actually want to grow.
Yeah.
And whereas that wasn't something that was really of particular interest to people in previous generations, because, well, the expectations around roles and work was very different. Now, especially in our culture, it's like we can be anything, we can grow and be anything. And so I think that technology and culture plays a huge role in that.
Well, and it's more acceptable to evolve and grow. They might not, I wonder if they even said the words, I am trying to grow and evolve. Like,
no,
there's also a stigma around changing, as if changing is like abandoning yourself and your upbringing and your family because you're changing. But if I'm always trying to change for the better. You talked about you said the word roles, and it made me think about, what's the role of a relationship, because we can look at, you look at work and role, meaning like, why is it hard? So everything is hard if you want to be really good at it. If you want to be good at your job, like there'll be attrition, and you'll have to take a low paying job, or you'll have to take a low level job, or you'll have to do some grunt work. Like there's everything that you want to be great at. There's
challenge.
There's time and challenge.
Yeah.
For work, you're like, I'm trying to have some self-worth and earn some money, right? Or, if you go to the gym and you challenge your muscles, it's because you're trying to like be fit and healthy on the inside and out. And so you go through so what is it that the relationships are here to give us a platform to better ourselves in? What area or areas?
Oh, well, the area of, spiritual growth, transcending our egos, transcending our past, transcending our childhoods, and really just to teach us how to love. When we're in a romantic relationship, that's really when we are most vulnerable. And that's really when we love someone and we romantically love someone, we want to be loved back. And our greatest fear is that the person is going to fall out of love with us. So that makes us a little nuts. Honestly, it makes us a little crazy. That's when we all our walls go up. That's when we cling. That's when we become manipulative. And the thing about love is that part of the deal is getting your heart broken. Like that's part of the deal of loving. And so when people get their heart broken, and the more heartbroken they've become, or the more heartbreak they've experienced, the less open they are in their relationships. And then that creates a lot of friction. creates a lot of friction. If you're not willing to communicate, if you're not willing to be vulnerable, if you're not willing to open, that causes a lot of friction. It causes a lot of stress. People become very selfish. So I think it's it's a spiritual game. And I think it's about learning how to really love, not love from a place of fear, not love just because of, what was expected of you, but really, really love in a way that, that isn't about clinging, that isn't about control, that isn't about manipulation. So I think that the purpose of a relationship is to teach us where our deeper work is, to transcend the things that are the psychological and emotional barriers we have to love. But it's hard because this is when we're most vulnerable.
It feels like for me, the more that I prioritize myself, the more someone else prioritizes me. And the more that I take care of myself, the more I take care of someone else. The more that I love myself, the more that I can love someone else. It really feels like a reflection game. And even to receive compliments, for someone to say, like, you look really pretty. It's like, I'm sure there was a lot of points in my life where I just would have been like, whatever.
Yeah.
And you don't even hear them, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't believe it yourself. So you talk about wanting, like, the goal is to learn how to love, but it's just really feels like so much about learning how to love yourself and take care of yourself so that you can do that for someone else.
That is a big part of it. For some people, it's not just about taking care of themselves. It's learning how to be less selfish and love. For some people, it's about being able to give to themselves more. For sure, I think that a lot of people need to learn how to love themselves more, especially women. There's this debate sort of in the whole therapy coaching world, personal development world, which is like, do you have to love yourself before you're in a relationship? And some people will say, no, you learn to love yourself through relationship. And then there's this whole camp that says you have to love yourself before. I think it's a combination really of both. I mean, I've never seen anyone who hated themselves have a good relationship. I just haven't. And you do learn to love yourself more by doing the work in a relationship. I mean, self-esteem, if you have really low self-esteem, you actually have to earn some esteem for yourself. You actually have to do some things in life that make you feel good about yourself. It's not about pleasing others or validation, but it's about meeting your needs. For some people, it's about making their bed. For some people, it's about getting out of bed. For some people, it's about, living. It's all about living up to your potential.
For me, it's not making the bed.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So for
permission to not be perfect.
Permission to not be perfect. Yeah. I mean, perfectionism is a killer, it just really is, because then basically we're chasing a standard that doesn't exist. So then we constantly feel terrible about ourselves. But yeah, I think that people who have a habit of not prioritizing themselves, of not being loyal to themselves, of not loving themselves, are going to choose partners who are just reflecting that right back to you. So yes, like you said, when you start to choose yourself, when you start to love yourself, you start to see it reflected back to you. And it definitely does happen. I mean, that's definitely the truth of it.
What are the most common problems that you see? Let's just stick with couples. I mean, what's the most common problems?
Not meeting each other's needs because they don't know what each other's needs are. Loving someone the way that they feel comfortable loving versus loving the way that the other person needs to be loved. Lack of communication is really, I mean, all relationship problems could basically boil down to a communication problem. I mean, if you peel away the onion far enough, at the core, what you get is a communication breakdown, because people get in their heads, they start creating stories, they start creating meanings, and we're constantly projecting. And communication is something that we were not taught in school, and it does not require perfection. It just requires courage. It requires vulnerability and, kindness. Just kindness. Like, hey, like, did you like if you love someone and all you do is criticize them or blame them. Is that loving? It's not. So, but you could say, I really love this person, but your behavior is not loving. So it's really teaching people how to communicate and actually love each other. And for some couples, like a lot of the individuals, for example, that I work with, it's also about them choosing better partners. Like that's actually a really big thing, because who you choose really matters.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, is it a matter of finding the right person or becoming the right person?
It's both. It's both. I think that who you choose matters, but a lot of people will choose based on like a checklist instead of choosing based on what is actually essential for their own well-being and psychology. You know, or they'll choose people just based on connection when they aren't really compatible, or they don't want the same things in life. And so I think that it's one thing, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're someone who's young and you're looking for like a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you know, like someone to just like, and you're not even thinking long term, doesn't matter so much. But when you get to a certain age and you're really wanting long term, then you have to choose based on like long term. Like you have to have similar visions and goals and whatnot. But ultimately, you know, people don't choose based enough on, do I feel good when I'm with this person? Do we communicate? Do we get through conflict really well?
Yeah.
And that's important.
What should getting through conflict really look like?
Willing to talk about it. Willing to talk about it, because no one really wants to, because most people are either like seeking conflict or conflict avoidant. I noticed that much more people are conflict avoidant, but there are some people who are just like, I need to fix the problem now. And then there are other people who are like, I would rather not look at the problem. And then you get those two people in a relationship, there's a lot of friction that happens. They could be great in every other area, but that is a real problem. And so it's about teaching people to not, first of all, not make mountains out of molehills, because some people will just take something really small and make it really big. It's like certain issues aren't going to go away. Like the important issues, you sit down, you talk about your feelings. You listen to each other's feelings. That's how you restore harmony. It's really important. You don't finger point, you don't blame. And a huge part of it is accountability. And the number one thing that we have to be accountable for in a relationship is what goes on in here. It's like all the, like how the neurosis that goes on in here. Like I'm creating a whole story. I am projecting, I don't even realize it, but I'm projecting mom onto you. I'm projecting dad onto you. I'm projecting my ex onto you. And now all of a sudden I resent you.
Yeah.
Right. And so these are the things. And it can be complicated. And sometimes it's complicated because two people are really trying to make it work and they're actually not right for each other.
Yeah. Even though you're good, you're not right. Right. Like, right. Because you can be good, but not great. And do you see that being an issue where it's almost not bad enough to break up, but it's not good enough to make it last? And it's like that fatal little in between where, you know, or like a job even can be the same. Like it's not that bad, but
right,
you know,
but you're kind of like tolerating it. I think that if someone finds themselves in that situation, first of all, it's like every situation is different. If you're like, if you have a long history and you have children, I think you should fight for that relationship. Like if it was once great and now it's like good, why? What are you doing? Like, what have you done to make it good and not great? So it's a lot of deep inner work. And yeah, sometimes you do have to walk away from someone who's like, you know, it's not that it's bad. It's just that it really is just not right. How do you know it's not right? Well, your temperaments don't mesh. You don't have the same values. You don't have the same vision for the future. These are the things that make it, I think, a deal breaker if you're, you know, someone's on the fence.
Are these the ones that possibly can be friends afterwards? And what do you think about exes being friends?
I think that some relationships don't end, they just change form. And so if you have, let's say you share children, like your relationship is going to change to co-parenting, right? Like once you have a child with someone, that relationship never goes away, never ends. So you have to learn how to actually co-parent. Friends, I mean, I see a lot of people clinging to the idea of friendship because they don't want to let go of the actual person. But sometimes, sometimes relationships end because they realize that they are just friends. Like they haven't had sex in years, or they don't feel passionate towards each other, but they care a lot about each other. And so that transition into friendship is easier. So I think it's really case dependent, honestly.
Yeah. What about the more casual ones? What about the ones that are like, not the ones that were way deep in it where you had kids and or you had a long-term relationship, but what about the casual ones?
Well, whenever someone asks, like, should I be friends with my ex? I always respond with, well, why do you want to be friends with your ex? Why? Is it because you can't let go? Is it because you have a great friendship and that was actually really the glue that was keeping you together? Or is it just that you just don't want to let go of this person? Were they even a friend to you? Because a lot of people will be like, can I still remain friends with my ex? But like, they were treated very poorly in the relationship. And it's like, well, they weren't a friend to you while they were sleeping with you. Why do you think they'd be a friend to you now? Like, do you really need another friend?
Is it going to get better?
Is it going to get, yeah, they already showed you. So
an area of relationship you were talking about, like this, neuroticism and stories that you come up with. And I'm plenty capable of that.
We all are.
But how do you guide people? And I feel like you would have a good grasp on this because you see the stories being told and you get to the truth many times. I'm sure. Yes. Everybody can omit the truth for sure. So it's like, you can't bank that everyone told you everything.
No.
Especially in couples therapy, if you're working with them individually, there might be more learned. How do you tell the difference between intuition and a story?
Yeah.
How accurate are those deep intuitions where you're just like, I just can't let this go?
Yeah. I've worked with people who've never really had a healthy relationship. And then I work with them and their wounds. And then they start a relationship for the first time. And I kind of coach them through that so that they can have their first really healthy relationship. It's kind of one of my favorite things to do. And so a lot of them will have a lot of anxiety and a lot of going on in their heads and not communicating. Well, the first thing to do is to communicate rather than ruminating. Is to actually, it's a very empowering thing to do in a relationship, especially if you're someone who has a lot of anxiety, for example, to learn actually how to communicate and to use your voice. So that's huge. How do you know the difference between intuition and intuition is something that really comes to you in a calm moment. And you really can't hear your intuition unless this gets really quiet. But I think that also one thing that people also get confused about that needs to be addressed is we're also like on the most primal level, we're animals, right? So sometimes our instinct is to self-protect, but it doesn't necessarily mean
it's not needed.
That it's needed. So it can get tricky. But I think so sometimes when you're like, I just have this instinct to run away, it's like, okay, well, that's your animal instinct. What is what is the quiet or higher mind say about that? So there's that. But I will say intuition comes to you in quiet moments. And and in order to hear it, like you really do have to get quiet. And by quiet, it's like your nervous system has to get quiet. You have to get relaxed. Usually people's intuition are strongest right before they're falling asleep. I have found for me personally, it's in the really early hours. So it's like before you actually wake up, but you're starting to wake up. That's when you are wide open. That is when people are most creative. That's when you're going to have your best ideas. That's when you're going to have, those thoughts. So yeah. And then another thing is if you're someone who struggles with a lot of anxiety and creating the neurosis in the head, and then you don't know how to distinguish between that and intuition, this is where mentorship gets really important. Having someone really objective to talk to help you flesh out through to move through the anxious state to get to a more calm state, someone who can, who can tell you, no, you know what, actually, you're not being crazy right now. This is actually really real and you need to address this. So that would be my answer for that.
Yeah, that always seems like such a tough one, right?
Very.
The stories you tell yourself in your head, and then you don't say anything and it builds. It's like, what's wrong? It's like, nothing. It's like, I don't know. I have an absolutely crazy story in my head. I can't even tell you right now.
No, but that's the way to communicate. I have a crazy story in my head and I'm totally ruminating and I know it's not fair, but can we talk about it?
What's the right reaction when that happens? Good
question. The right yeah, sure. Let's talk about it. What's going on? What's going on in your head? Tell me.
What's the wrong reaction? What's
wrong with you? Relax, calm down. Everything's fine. That's the wrong reaction.
This sounds like in something I've read about, like it's kind of like almost like a bid for affection in a way, a little bit too. Like, I want to connect with you. I want to share. I want to go deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you read into those in understanding the right and wrong way to react, that you can perceive the reaction or see the reaction? What about, like, you've been talking recently about like micro rejections and, things like, mixed messages. How do we sift through all of that to be able to determine whether or not we really are in the right situation or not?
Well, I think it starts with evaluating oneself. Like, have you been rejecting? I mean, because look, we get mindless sometimes, like, we get caught in our own stuff. And sometimes we're just like not paying attention. And the person who you're in a relationship will sometimes be mindless. It's like, sometimes they're just not like, no one's perfect.
Yeah.
No one's perfect. And no one is put on this earth to be responsible for someone else's feelings. Like, first, like, we just can't be. I mean, yes, when we're in a
it's hard enough for us to be responsible for our own feelings, let alone someone else to be able to know
exactly
our past. And
yes, like, I mean, we just can't. The playing games and the mixed messages is usually happening in dating an early relationship. And that's usually where I see it the most.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then people are like, they're just sending me so many mixed messages. I'm so confused. It's like, okay, then this is why I encourage people, open your mouth and say it. Say, I am feeling like there's a lot of mixed messages. I don't quite understand what's going on here. I really like you. And sometimes I feel like you really like me too. And sometimes I'm not so sure. What are you feeling? But you have to be willing to face the potential of rejection. Yep. But clarity is power. It's really important to have that kind of clarity. The micro rejections is just like, like, hey, I'm feeling like I'm feeling a little disconnected. I've been feeling really attached to my phone. You seem really attached to your phone. Can we like maybe just have like some quality time this afternoon and go for a walk, And then the other person, if they're busy or they have something to do, it's like the right answer is, I would love that. You're totally right. I can't do it then, but I can do it. Tomorrow at this time. Would that work for you?
Mm-hmm. The wrong one is, God, you're so needy.
The wrong one is just like, basically, God, you're so needy, or like, I'm really busy.
Don't I already do enough for you?
Yeah. Like, what do you want to do? Like, or just like, it's more an energy. It's not even something that they say. It's almost like you're encroaching on my space right now.
Yeah. One of the frustrating ones in experience is when someone says, I mean, I'm here. What more do you want? I'm here. I'm right next to you. And you said the word energy, but there's a total difference between someone that's sitting there and someone that wants to be sitting there.
Who's present.
Yeah.
Who's present.
Because it feels like such bullshit when it doesn't feel right. And they're like, but I'm here. And then it makes you feel crazy. It's kind of like lightweight gaslighting.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so there's two things I want to say to that. First of all, when you're in a relationship, people need to get better at doing the activities that the other person wants to do. It's like, if your partner wants to watch sports, but you don't like sports, but you're feeling a little disconnected from them, like, watch a game with them. That's because that's their idea of quality time. So we have to really, this is so important. We can't just give in the way that we want to be given. We have to give in the ways that they would really appreciate. So wanting connection is important, but sometimes we have to see the ways in which we can connect with our partner, or see the ways in which they're trying. So you're like, what do you mean? I'm right here. Okay. Yeah, I know, but I'm feeling like, you're right here, but somehow we're just slightly disconnected. You must be feeling like that too from me. I mean, I would imagine you are too.
Yeah. It's the truth of the energy.
When someone's actually like having a conversation with you, but they're not listening to anything you say. They're like in their heads, plotting their reply. I mean, how many times have you just, you're plotting the reply, you're not really listening, which, sometimes you have to do like, when you're interviewing or something like that. But when you're in an intimate setting, like really listening, it's so huge. I mean, we weren't really taught how to really listen to someone when they're sharing. And a lot of people will complain, like a lot of women will complain that their partners don't talk enough to them. Well, oftentimes what I've discovered is that they are talking, but they're not really listening, or they want it to look a certain way. They want it to be a certain way, like sitting down, facing each other. Sometimes like your partner is actually sharing things with you. Are you listening?
Listen to understand, don't listen to reply.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Which leads me to a space that feels talked about a lot. I've recently feel like I might not be as good at it as I thought I was, which is why I'm curious about it. But what does it mean to actually be emotionally vulnerable or be vulnerable? And we're especially asking this of men these days.
Yeah. So to be vulnerable, it's a few things. It's letting, and actually women are really struggling with vulnerability. Women have so many walls up now. And I think that a lot of women are wanting their partners to be vulnerable first before they open. A vulnerable person is someone who's just willing to kind of share what's at their inner world with someone. They're willing to share something that they struggle with. They're willing to be open about a struggle. They're willing to be open about something that really touches them and moves them. So it's not just vulnerability is not just about discussing the hard stuff. It's just it's willing to put yourself out there emotionally for someone to potentially reject you. Really.
Even if it's just something you like or something you're into, like, oh my gosh, I saw this cool video. You got to watch this. Just anything that exposes what you're interested in and what's going on inside your head.
I think there's a level of vulnerability to that, but I think that there's far more vulnerability in, tears watching a movie, or saying, I'm really afraid of something. Can I talk to you about it? I'm really afraid that you're going to leave me. I'm afraid that, my mom, whatever, is sick. Like whatever it is, just sharing what's like really that's very deep inside of you, that feels raw. It's a skill. It's a skill because so many of us are walking around feeling very guarded, really guarded. It's an epidemic. People don't want to be hurt. They don't want to be seen as weak.
It seems like there's more opportunity than ever to be hurt in relationships, because it seems like it's not like the 50s where you just stick it out. And I mean, they were hurting too, I think, in just a different way. Right?
I think they were definitely hurting.
But I think that, with social media and a million dating apps, and like the threats are everywhere.
Yeah, I think that, in the 50s, there was just a lot more certainty. It's like, we got married, we stay married, and now it's like, well, I can have this option over here and the grass is greener over there. And maybe I can do that over there. And so that does make people feel incredibly uncertain and much more vulnerable to rejection, for sure.
Yeah. Well, within that realm of social media and dating apps and things like that, what's the line there? Like, meaning, should you be able to see each other's information? Should you, like, there's always that sort of issue in relationships where you want to look at their phone, or
Yeah.
but you think if I do, I shouldn't be here anyway, or if I feel like I need to.
I think that if you feel like you need to look at your partner's phone, there's two things that could be going on. Number one, you're bringing your old baggage from an old relationship into your current relationship, or something is not going well in your current relationship. You don't feel connected. You're suspicious of something. Trust is the most important thing in a relationship. So you should not feel like you have to check your partner's phone. And if you do, it's definitely an alert. And some people I've worked with, they have felt that impulse just because they've been cheated on in the past, but it's not, it really has nothing to do with their current relationship. It's really about them being able to build that trust muscle within themselves. And for others, it's because they have felt disconnected. They suspect something is going on, but it's not a good sign. Good relationships, it's like, if you're in a relationship and let's just say, it's not an early relationship, like you're in it, you've been together, maybe you're married, you're partnered, and then you go out for dinner and let's just say you forgot your phone, but you really have to check something like important. It's like a work thing. And then you should be able to say to your partner, can I have your phone? I have to check something. And they should be like, yeah, of course. If there is I think you should have each other's codes. Only for that, there should be so much trust that no one's going to snoop, so much trust that there's nothing that you're hiding. That's the level of trust that is really necessary in a relationship.
Right. Because that's actually the same, but different, right? There should be so much trust that the trust is, I'm not going to look at it, but the trust is, here's my code.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I forgot my phone.
The opposite sides of the coin.
Exactly.
What happens when trust has been broken?
Depends how it's been broken. Was it broken because of an affair? Was it broken because, your partner said that they wanted to do this for a living and they decided to pivot and do something else for a living? Mm-hmm. They changed in some way. Was trust broken because, I don't know, they didn't keep a secret?
What is the pathway back to trusting? Especially for both sides, for the person that's learning how to trust again and for the person that is trying to earn the trust again.
Apology and accountability. So if someone has betrayed a loved one's trust, they have to be extremely remorseful and they have to be very apologetic and very accountable. If it's an affair, and I just recently interviewed someone, affairs can be extremely complicated. Mm. And oftentimes what you'll find is that it's not a 50-50 split of who's responsible, but even the person who was cheated on, if they want to work on the relationship, they will see that they played a role in whatever was not working in the relationship. It does not condone the behavior.
Right. Right. Doesn't mean they're not wrong, but it just means that you can see the full picture.
You can see the full picture if you want to repair.
Right.
If you want to repair, you have to repair what was damaged in the relationship that kind of led to that. If it's a big betrayal, like an infidelity, they cannot do it alone. You need a third party.
How early should that be something that comes into the relationship?
I think that there's a lot of value in doing it really early on to learn how to communicate best.
Even before a problem.
Before the problem. Absolutely. Because a lot of people go into couples therapy when it's become too late.
Right. And it's not even when the problem starts, it's this is our last ditch effort.
Yeah. This is we feel desperate. Yeah. So I think really early on, I think that I'm not a religious person, but I know that in many different faiths, people before they get married, for example, will meet with their rabbi or meet with their priest and to have some sort of counseling to make sure that their marriage is great. I think that's a wonderful practice, to be honest. I think it's smart. So I think do it before the problem.
Yeah. Something I listened to, you said you learned a lot from David Deida about masculine, feminine, men, women.
Yeah.
And I'm so fascinated with that area because as we're talking about, infidelity or trust issues, I interviewed David Buss, evolutionary psychologist, and that men cheat for variety and women kind of cheat to leave usually because they're not happy. So I'm like always fascinated with not only men and women and what they need. Let's start there. Like, what is it that a man looks for in a relationship, and what does a woman generally look for in a relationship?
Well, I think that men and women are more similar than they are different.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually don't think so. I think that I want to go back to what he said, because I think it's important. I think the men who chronically cheat are cheating for variety. But I think when two people love each other and there's an infidelity, it is because certain needs are not being met inside the relationship. So for a lot of women, they will cheat and have an affair because at home it's really safe and stable, but they want the excitement and they want their romance again. It's like their partner is sleeping at the wheel. They have not turned up the romance, and women need romance.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times men will have affairs because they feel dead inside, and it's not that their partner's fault. It's almost like a midlife crisis, if you will, just not feeling like the purpose. And so, but either way, the affair is the metaphor. It's the thing that makes the person feel like more alive again. I think that both men and women get into a relationship for the same things, which is love and companionship. I think women value connection at a really high level. Mm-hmm. And I think that typically what you have found is that men will value sort of like their purpose, maybe at a higher level. But things are changing. And I think that both women and men need to find some sort of purpose. I think for women, it doesn't necessarily have to be through work for every woman, but I think everyone needs purpose. But I think both men and women are in it for the same thing. But for attraction to happen inside of a relationship, there mm-hmm. has to be polarity. There has to be a duality. And so women typically who are attracted to men, and even some women who are attracted to women typically are attracted to strength. And what they will do is unconsciously test every partner, poke at them, push their buttons, because what they're doing on an unconscious level is figuring out, like, are you going to protect me in a foxhole? Typically, that's not what men are looking for. Maybe there's some gay men who are looking for that, who are looking for that strength and protection. But typically what men are looking for is that they want to really be appreciated, and they want to actually be the hero. And they really want to be respected in that way and seen as strong. And they want to, like, the most attractive thing for a man who dates a woman in particular is she going to let me in? Am I going to be let into her heart?
Yeah.
Or because if it's constant, I don't need you, it's very rejecting. Neediness doesn't work either.
Right.
Right. Neediness doesn't work either. But I think that women typically will get into a relationship to feel a sense of safety and protection. And I don't think that men value that, but they don't value that as much as women do.
Do you mean physical safety and protection?
All of it, emotional, physical, all of the above.
Like, what does it look to be emotionally available?
So I've worked with many men. I've worked with more women than men, but I've worked with a lot of men. And their chief complaint in relationships is, I'm not appreciated. Nothing I ever do is good enough for her or for him. She's stressed out so much that I feel like I can't connect to her. Heart is closed. I don't feel like this is not what they're saying, but this is the meaning behind it. I don't feel like I could be the one who can just like make her life better. She's not letting me do that.
This like idea or experience of containment feels really powerful. Can you explain what that is?
You mean the masculine containment?
Yeah, for a man to be able to provide containment.
Yeah, so I think that one of the hardest things for women, and I've worked with plenty of gay women who struggled this with other women, but in general, like women with men, is he can't, it's like his threshold to be able to handle difficult emotion is very low. And when I'm upset, he wants to fix it. And what I need is for him to be so with me and so present. And that's actually what heals me in the moment. That's one thing. Being grounded, knowing who he is. And making it so that she can relax. She wants to be able to relax.
Yeah.
But the problem that I see with this between men and women is like, so she just wants to relax. And she can only relax knowing that her partner is like not judging her for her emotional states, is present, isn't going to be like looking at other women. You know, he's steady. He creates the container in which she can actually unravel a little bit.
Yeah.
But on the other end of the spectrum, women are too often going to their men with their complaints about the man and emasculating them over and over and over again.
They're defeated.
And they feel defeated. And so this is, I'm describing just like the most common problem that I see in relationships is the one person feels totally unseen, you know, unsafe, like unheard, and the other one feels totally defeated. Because in those moments, they don't know how to make each other happy. They don't know how to meet each other's needs. So it's learning how to work through that and to figure out what's not working and to really guide them to a place where they are co-creating the best possible bond and relationship that they can. But that's really the most common pattern I see.
Is that, what do you see as being the success rate of that? Because that sounds like an indication of perhaps a lack of compatibility.
Yeah, it's not a lack of compatibility at all. It's a lack of communication, and it's a lack of just skill. You know, like if you're in a relationship with a man, you have to understand men a little bit to be able to relate. Yeah. If you're in a relationship with a woman, you have to understand women. So having that understanding of what each other's needs are is really what's fundamental. It's not a lack of compatibility necessarily. You could be very compatible, but you're butting heads here because, I don't know, there's just lots of things that have stacked one on top of the other. We bring our stress to relationships all the time. We don't take a lot of responsibility. You know, we don't actually put in the effort to sustain attraction. There's a lot of things that can happen over the course of a long-term relationship. That's not just lack of compatibility. But yes, sometimes one person grows and the other person doesn't grow. Sometimes people do grow apart. I mean, we're not static beings. We're constantly evolving.
How do we know what we need? Like, I've said this for a long time. I'm like, knowing who you are is way the F harder than you think. Like, wait, and because we're always evolving too, right? So
yes, so you have to ask that question.
You are who you are, but you're not just static yourself. So like you change too. 100%. How do we get a good baseline and keep up with it?
I think, well, first of all, every 6 months asking yourself that question. Understanding what you need is also understanding where your priorities lie. Start with asking yourself, like, do I feel safe? Am I having fun? Or is it all work, no play? Do I feel connection? Do I feel like isolated, or do I feel like there's community? Do I feel like I'm growing? Do I feel like, I'm giving back? Like, so that's what because everyone has those needs. Everyone has the need to feel safe. Everyone has the need for fun. Everyone has the need to feel loved.
Needs to me feel also not just like what I need from you, my partner, but knowing what you need for yourself, meaning like, am I doing a good enough job, like with my hobbies that I love? Am I keeping up with it? Am I spending enough girl time? Are we having like healthy time apart? Am I doing something I actually love doing for work or whatever, what you're doing outside of just for fun? Like those feel like almost just as important as what you need from someone.
Oh,
Is what you're
absolutely.
giving to yourself to like know
Absolutely.
yourself well enough.
Yeah. We have work, we have relationships of all kinds. And then we have like our own like physical, spiritual, mental well-being. And I think it's just always like, okay, if I'm feeling a bit off, a powerful question to ask yourself is like, well, what's missing? Because sometimes what's missing is just community. Sometimes what's missing is like, you need to have some fun. Sometimes what's missing is you need like, I don't know, maybe like one is not investing enough in the hobbies that actually make them feel alive and passionate.
Would you say that one of the big symptoms of a relationship that needs attention and work and communication is sex or lack of?
I think sex is important to a relationship, but not every person values it the same. So it depends on the couple. So not everyone values sex the same way. And it can become difficult if you're in a relationship with someone who values it very high and you value it very low. That's very difficult. But, values do need to be aligned. So not everyone values sex. I mean, there's some couples that are very happy having sex once a month or once a week. And there are some who are like, no, I need to do it multiple times a week. These are one of the difficult conversations that couples need to have is that if you're in a relationship and it's important to you to have something beyond just companionship, then keeping chemistry alive and attraction alive and your sex lives alive is important and takes attention.
What are the best ways to do that?
The least sexy thing is being stressed out all the time. That's not when we're hot, is when we're stressed. So if we're chronically stressed, what's happening? Are we not giving to ourselves? Are we not filling our cup? Are we not exercising? Are we not resting? Are we not talking to someone? So we have to take care of our emotional and mental well-being. That's very, very important because when we do, we're more energized. And when we're more energized, we bring that energy to a relationship and it's sexy.
Mm-hmm.
Also having passion outside of the relationship. Like the hottest thing is seeing the person that you're into, that you're in a relationship with, in their element. It could be like, I was talking to my friend, she's like, I'm most attracted to my husband when we're traveling because that's when he's really a great traveler. He takes control. He speaks multiple languages. They travel overseas. So he just moves through the nuance of international travel so gracefully. And she's like, that's when he's hottest to me. You're doing things that are enhancing that you get to see that, and I think every couple, and it's different for every single one, but every couple has to navigate the dance between togetherness and separateness, time together, but also time apart. Yeah. And it has to work for both people.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a big part of compatibility, actually, is that unspoken agreement about what feels, how amount of time feels apart feels good, like it makes the heart grow fonder versus not.
I saw on Instagram, it was John Gottman talking about that the things that worked 50 years ago in a relationship are really a lot of the same things that still work today. I feel like the landscape of relationships is getting tested and challenged. We look at like open relationships or polyamory or Hollywood. I don't know. There's just like there's so many phrases, words, letters, names. So what is it that is like the fundamentals and what is it that still works? And what do you see maybe changing and being part of the future of relationships that's going to be a good add-in that's new?
We put so much stock in romantic relationships now. It's like, I need you to be my soulmate. Like people 50 years ago weren't looking for a soulmate.
Yeah.
And it's like, I need you to be my best friend, my confidant, my this and that. And I think we just put so much stock in romantic relationships, and really we need to have multiple sources of love around us. So that would be one thing change that I think that, we have to adapt to a little bit, but also the pitfall is that now people are like searching for the one and they want this perfect person. to check all the boxes and meet all their needs. It's impossible to meet each other's needs all the time. The basics is just be kind to each other. The basics is communication. The basics is listen to one another. The basics is have quality time together. You know, for some people, raise a family together, accepting each other fundamentally for who the other person is. When you look at really successful relationships, and I measure successful relationships as two people who really like each other and love each other. They're not perfect, but they really, really like each other. And they still want to have sex with each other. Maybe not like it was in the beginning. That doesn't last forever, but they're still attracted, and they really just, they laugh together. They have a good time together. They move through, they have challenges, but they're not constantly in a state of challenge. Those people, they are just really good friends to each other, and they accept each other 100%. That doesn't mean that they accept or tolerate shitty behavior. No. But they're like, oh, this is your thing. This is your weakness. Like, this is my weakness. Like, I'm not judging you for that. I love you for that. If I'm going to judge you for that, then we're not right for each other.
Why is it that we always want our partner to be just like us?
It's really a big problem because it's like, it would be so boring. We have to celebrate the differences. Like, there has to be, like, you know, you need friction to create fire. So if you're just too much of the same, after a while, you don't want to sleep with too much of the same.
Sure. I think Gottman even says that the amount of friction, there's like a perfect percent. There's a really successful ratio for like good to bad communication.
But you have to also understand that a relationship is the sum of its parts. So it's like, if a relationship's not going well, what are the two people in the relationship not doing well? And some people, and I've been there before, so it's not a judgment, but it's something that people need to be aware of and reflect on. And that is, some people, they have a really bad habit of just being critical, or they have a really bad habit of wanting to control, or they have a really bad habit of whatever it is.
The more I judge myself, the more I judge someone else.
Yes, 100%.
You know, like, it's just such a reflection. Like,
totally.
The more, like, I used to judge people for being lazy a lot because
you're a perfectionist.
And I would never sit around. And so the more I give myself permission to rest, the more I now look at someone resting instead of being lazy, right? Like, it always seems like it just comes back to the self.
Yes. And that would be sort of like the shadow work, like the things that really trigger us in someone else is the thing that we are so divorced from in our lives. And the funny thing about relationships is that let's say the super type A personality might be attracted to the really easygoing, go with the flow person because they have something in them that they wish they had inside themselves. Or maybe it is inside themselves, but they've repressed it. And so they're attracted to that. But if you don't actually acknowledge it in yourself, if you don't actually then rest, then you're just constantly going to see that then that go with the flow person that you were so attracted to in the beginning now becomes like the thorn on your side. But if you can then learn how to go with the flow, if you can learn how to rest, then you can appreciate more what this person brings to the relationship.
We live a lot longer, so a relationship's really supposed to last a lifetime.
I don't know, probably not. I think it depends at what point in your life you begin the relationship.
Is there a reframe just needed for relationships ending instead of calling them failing? Because as we grow and evolve, it can be beautiful to it's always beautiful when you grow and evolve in a positive way. There's no guarantee that's going to be with that person. But we look at every time our relationship ends and we look at like, what's wrong with me? We're in a day and age where people are going to start to live to 120.
I know, it's kind of nuts, right? Look, there are lots of people who stay together for 50 years and they're miserable. I mean, I see that as a bigger failure.
Why?
Well, because why is that a success? Just because you lasted, you were miserable and making each other miserable.
So the failure is not saying yes to yourself and your own happiness.
Yeah, well, I mean, but that's a slippery slope.
Or being honest.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope because look, there are people who give up too soon and there are people who stay too long. And the only thing you can do is know what your pattern is. Some people come into our lives and they're meant to wake us up. Some people come into our lives and they're meant to just like get us through a difficult part in our lives.
Sure.
Some people come into our lives and they're just meant to be like They're just meant to be a chapter, not many. And that doesn't mean that because it ended, that's a failure. I think that the hardest thing is hanging on to people who really so clearly are just meant to be a chapter. And it's very hard. Look, love is very irrational.
Something little while back, a couple months ago, that maybe I read it, watched it, that chemistry is actually a symptom of a trauma. And I'm like, I am going to stay in trauma forever then.
Because I don't agree with that.
No way I'm stepping into a relationship where I'm not really feeling it, but they're
nice. No, I don't agree with that statement at all.
Thank God. Tell me why. No. Tell everyone why chemistry is important.
Well, first of all, chemistry is mostly is hormones and neurotransmitters. That's basically what it is. It's smell, it's pheromones, it's whatnot. Now, if your pattern is to only be attracted to people who abuse you in one form or another, the chemistry that you're having with people is a result of your trauma. If you're only having chemistry with people who don't abuse you, but it ends up just not being right, well, you have to, your chemistry is not necessarily due to trauma, but it needs to be matured.
It's like your chemistry is off, so you're attracting the wrong thing. So
you're attracted to the wrong thing. So in other words, it's like, okay, when I said women are attracted to strength, and so we're talking heteronormatively right now. But I also know a lot of gay women who are attracted to strength. But let's just stick with this. So women are attracted to strength. Let's stick with the woman and the man, because this is what I see the most. This is an example that I'm about to share when it comes to chemistry. Oh, he's got broad shoulders. He's got a good job. He's got a little bit of an edge, a little bit of a bad boy edge. He's strong. I'm attracted. But what she needs to see is that you want to be attracted to mental strength and someone who can actually, not just the mental strength, emotional strength, someone who will protect you. And that's very important. You don't know that until you actually get to know someone. How many times have you seen walking down the street an absolutely stunningly beautiful model level, like amazing looking woman with a man who's really unattractive? And people will say, well,
definitely more common that direction.
Yeah, it's more common that direction than the other way, right? Why? Oh, well, she's a gold digger. No, she feels safe with that man. He makes her laugh. He gives her stability. He makes her feel seen. Sometimes our picker needs to be upgraded. But yeah, so if you're constantly having chemistry with people who are abandoning you or abusing you or just not right for you, yes, it could be a symptom of trauma. But to say overall that chemistry is just trauma is I don't agree with that at all. You have to have chemistry, but you have to also be mature and start to find different things more attractive. You have to, some people really have to realign their picker. And a big part of that is learning to become vulnerable. It's learning to actually reveal yourself. It's learning to form deeper connections with people.
All right. Well, to sort of like close up the loop on everything, what is it that we can do to identify our patterns so that we can improve our picker and find better partners? Because it's not just about fixing yourself, it's about finding the right person as well. So
yes.
So part of that is that we haven't talked about is some tips on figuring out what our pattern is so that we can start to become aware.
Write down like all the relationships that you've had, write down what worked, write down what didn't work. Write down some of the feedback that you've gotten, some of the fights that keep on happening. Write down the kind of person, your type. Because sometimes if you've been having a really difficult time, sometimes you have to broaden your type. Can't just have one type. That you really don't have a lot of leverage if you're only attracted to a certain type. And sometimes the person who's really your type is the person that's worse for you, because if you're so attracted that you become that your vision becomes clouded, that you don't see the person for who they really are, that's when we really screw ourselves over. So maybe that's your pattern. Maybe your pattern is, that you bring too much stress to a relationship. Maybe your pattern is that you keep dating people who are certain, like I said, a certain type. So figure out what it is that not that you want in a partner, but that you absolutely need, and just choose 3 things that you really need in order to build the relationship that you want to build.
Do you think that you should come up with deal breakers?
Yes. And they should only be 3 to 5.
Okay.
Absolute deal breakers. And you do that based on, you study your past and your history, and you study just who you are. Figure out what a deal breaker is. And for some people, it's like drugs, alcohol, smoking, deal breaker. You don't want a kid? Deal breaker. They can't be your preferences, because if you go by preferences, you could be rejecting the very person who is really meant for you. It has to be the things that are just like, absolutely not. I'd rather die than tolerate that for a lifetime with someone.
Yeah. Your 3 musts and your 3 must nots.
Yeah. It has to. Yeah. It's very important, but you have to then stick to that.
Stick to it and audit it as it goes along. Every 6 months, every 12 months. Like
totally. And have conversations about it. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, cool. Thanks, Jillian. You're amazing. And I'm just going to keep watching all your stuff because it's so good.
I appreciate that.
My friends a lot. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thanks for all your help. Thanks everybody for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.